Next speaker is Gabe Larson. Gabe has consulted global clients for more than 10 years on how to generate revenue quickly. Prior to joining InsideSales.com, Gabe spent more than 4 years at Gallup, consulting clients such as Heinz, Toyota, Honda, IKEA, and TD Ameritrade. He also helped establish and grow Gallup's Middle East offices, doubling revenues in his first year in the region. Gabe is one of the true revenue acceleration experts in the industry. He also speaks German and is a huge Bratwurst fan. Ladies and gentlemen, Gabe Larson.
Hello, my name is Gabe Larson, and I'm the director of the Momentum Strategy team at InsideSales.com, the leader in sales acceleration technology. Today I'm going to be talking about, are you breaking the 5 laws of sales? And I'm excited to jump right in and tackle the topic. Laws, and more laws. So many of us have learned probably in our school days that Sir Isaac Newton started thinking about the law of gravity when an apple fell on his head. Although gravity cannot be seen with the human eye, it's a very real force. When people can perceive the effects of gravity, scientists are not sure what it is. Frankly, sales is no different. There are laws that often cannot be seen with the human eye, but are very real in their ability to positively or negatively affect your business. In this session, we will discuss the 5 laws of sales that every sales leader should know about. The first law, the law of specialization. Now, we found that companies who can effectively specialize have a 7-point higher close rate. Let's look at how this looks in the market. When you look at a B2B motion and it comes to the demand generation function, you're looking most often at an inbound function that generates some leads. You've got list purchasing, you've got an events team that'll do trade shows, and then you've got probably some self-sourcing activities. As you move down the function, all that activity comes to some sort of sales development function, and wow, is this really starting to specialize. You've got your response team that often is now splitting into not just a response team, but maybe more of a sophisticated enterprise response team. You've got an outbound team that focuses more often on your cold calling initiatives, and that's segmented often by geo and segmented by size, similar to an enterprise function. In addition, you may have a field function. Something that we're starting to see a little bit more of is like a social selling team, as well as a channel team that'll work with channel partners. The key to this function is that operations role. All leads flow into the operations role, and then as the operations role accesses those leads, they will help score them so that as they move to that SDR function, you can start to think about prioritization, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Moving past that sales development function, the inside or sales team becomes extremely specialized. You may do, most likely I've seen often the segment, again, kind of small, medium, or large. Geo often comes into consideration here, the field team, maybe channel, and then these are often supported by some sort of sales engineering role. And then lastly, you've got that structured client success team that's really becoming specialized with an expander role, implementation by segment, and potentially some sort of product support role. So this is what it looks like holistically. Boy, if you start to work in this type of structure, you can seriously start to see the velocity and the throughput increase. But every time there's a handoff, you've got to be conscientious as you move through a specialized system. One of the cases I ran into recently was with a client. This is an inbound response team who received web leads, got them from Marketo into Salesforce, ran some sort of validation check, and then had 3 things potentially happen. If it was a certain type of lead, like a supplier lead or a commercial lead, they'd go ahead and attempt contact. However, if it was an enterprise lead, they'd waste a lot of time researching it, try to find another team that they could pass it on to, and then actually pass it on to that other person. Oh my goodness, breaking the law of specialization. It's a huge time waster. What we told them is let's just create an enterprise response team and route those leads directly to them so that we can immediately respond to those inquiries and have a sophisticated team to be able to handle them. That's the way you want to be thinking about it. Next, law of prioritization. Companies who can effectively prioritize 97% higher conversion rates. The problem with prioritization is it's messy. Here's a stat for you. 50% of leads are qualified, but not yet ready to buy. Another one, 94% of MQLs don't close. It just gets confusing for reps. How do I best prioritize my time to maximize my dollars, maximize my throughput? We actually ran a test with a client. It was something we wanted to just kind of see. We submitted what the client considered as a bad lead, and then we submitted a web lead that the client considered a good lead. And we wanted to watch to see how reps would prioritize those different leads. Here's the output. So when we submitted a bad lead, I kid you not, over a 5-day period, this lead was called 22 times. 22 times. I mean, we were both just baffled at that. Now, in contrast, when we submitted the good lead, or what we considered a good lead, looking over a slightly longer period, about 14 days, that lead was only called 3 times. I think a lot of reps think they know which leads are best and which are not best. But as this indicates, oftentimes when the proof's in the pudding, and they just don't. So how can you start thinking about prioritization? I typically recommend a 3-step process in a lot of my strategic work with our clients. Now, something like this. Step 1 is you start with lead source. Any type of sophisticated scoring model is going to take lead source into consideration. So that's something I think you can do on your own. Number 2, get a good marketing qualification or an MQL score in place. And then number 3, you want to be looking at a predictive lead score and how that may fit into your company and culture. I'll give you an example of one thing we did at a client here. So we pushed them and said, let's get your lead sources, and then let's get conversion rates. Now notice with this, you've got, 5, 6, 7 lead sources, and I've highlighted in green the lead sources that have the best conversion rates. The problem with only going with lead sources to conversion rates is you get what I call a false positive. Down there at the bottom, it looks like swag offerings, for example, are the leads that are converting the best from lead to opportunity. But if you take it one step further, you'll find that, oh man, yeah, great, swag offerings are converting at a high rate from lead to opportunity, but from opportunity to close, they're not actually doing anything. So I typically like to look at both of them, conversion and close rate, and then hone in on close rates and focus on those leads that are really going to get you your best ACV, your best revenue, and start with that as a prioritization scheme. Next, law of immediacy. Now, with the law of immediacy, we published in the Harvard Business Review almost 5 years ago the findings from a study showed how fast companies and people respond to inbound web leads. The results were as appalling as they are now. The average is sitting around 38 hours, but the magic number is about 5 minutes. If you're able to respond to inbound inquiries in under 5 minutes, you're about 100 times more likely to contact that person and 21 times more likely to qualify that person. But sadly, most companies believe that this law is only in effect for inbound web leads. But the truth is, the law is in effect in many other places, and I want to give you a few of those examples. So we talked about the web lead, and that on the far left, you're looking at a 5-minute rule. Chat and email follow a very similar principle. If you don't have a chat program, you need to think twice about it. But if you're going to have a chat program, You got to staff it. You got to be able to respond to requests in a very timely manner. One that's coming online extremely fast is email engagement activity. There's tools out there now that open up the black box of email. And when someone downloads an important document or clicks through to your website, you're notified of that activity. When you're notified of that activity, that's got to trigger immediate response so you reach back out and can convert or qualify or contact that person as you wouldn't have before. The last three are interesting. Trade shows is one that is absolutely ready for disruption. It's mind-boggling. It is mind-boggling that we're still in a place where we go to trade shows, have one person or one sales rep collect cards, maybe bring them home, maybe follow up with them a week, 2 weeks, months later. I honestly got a call from a vendor from Dreamforce 5 months after the show had actually happened. We have got to tighten this process and get it down to an hour after they visit our booth. We internally have been practicing this and have seen some fantastic results. The next one is appointments, and this really falls right in that area between the handoff of the sales development rep to the sales closer. Our magic number that we've seen is 3 days. Anything more than 3 days, your hold rates on your appointments that have been set drop significantly. So remember that magic number of 3. And then deals, thinking consciously about the handoff between a closer and account manager, we've seen way better client satisfaction if a warm kickoff or a warm handoff between sales and account management happens within 1 week after the deal is closed. So the law of immediacy is not just on inbound inquiries. It is throughout your sales process, and that's something to be looking for. Next, the law of persistency. Companies who follow the law of persistency can contact a lot more, almost 90% of their leads. Let's look at it. This graph shows contact percentage or chance of contacting and the number of calls that are made. Average number of dials per lead is sitting at about 1.5. You want to maximize your ability to get hold of busy decision makers. You're going to do a minimum of 6. I like to shoot for 6 on outbound or cold prospects and get more in the range of 10 for inbound or inbound generated demand. What I think we really need to get companies to start moving towards is a structured cadence that follows strong persistency. So I've put together just a sample here, and you can see over a 2-week time frame, this is usually where I like to go. You'll see about 10 phone calls, and then 3 emails and 3 voicemails. We have some strong data to suggest that those 3 numbers on email and voicemail is really where you want to be. Anything more than that, you're going to see some decrease in some important numbers. Lastly, the law of the knack. This one's, people kind of say, what's the law of the knack? Companies can predict rep success with 85% accuracy. Let's talk about how. So I started in sales, just about 15 years ago as an inside sales manager. And I remember we were looking for a director role, and I think we thought we found him. Boy, we were going through resumes fast. Perfect resume pops up. 10 plus years of solid experience. He built sales teams in the online space. He graduated from a nearby university. He became the director, and he was going to be the person to take us to the next level. But sadly, he failed and was gone in a few months. Nobody was there to fill his shoes, so the team went kind of directorless for a time. But there was one individual on the sales team who had been hired about the same time as the previously mentioned director. He literally had no resume. He was a kid without any prior sales experience, going part-time to a local state college. But after a year of solid performance, he became the manager and soon the director. With his help, the team almost quadrupled in size and revenue. To this day, he's considered one of the better managers to come through the company. How is that possible? How did a kid with no resume going part-time to a state college become one of the best salespeople in our company has ever seen, while an individual with the right resume completely fail? Call it the law of the knack. It's the difference between skills, experience, and talent. Talent, according to all of our studies, is that X factor that separates top performers from bottom performers. I was working with one company, and we did exactly that. We said, let's look at your hiring model. Let's look at the people on your sales team. In the red, you're seeing people who we predicted, looking at their talent, looking at their psychometric assessment scores, who would basically perform below quota. Then we had the same concept with people who scored high or above quota. Using a predictive psychometric model, we were able to say, of the people who we predicted to be above 100% quota, actually scored at 123% quota. Of the people who we predicted would be below 100% quota, their quota was 84% on average. The numbers are excruciating. We've got to get the right people on the bus and use the law of the knack to understand that it's about talent. That's the X factor. Skills and experience are minimum thresholds and important, but talent is what drives top performance. Okay, to bring it to a close here, the 5 laws of sales: prioritization, specialization, immediacy, persistency, and the knack. Now, if you'd like to learn more about that, please initiate a dialogue with me. It's G as in Gabe Larson, EN at InsideSales.com. You've also got my Twitter handle here at the bottom. I'm always open for a dialogue. In addition, if you visit our booth here on the platform and click the Momentum button, you'll be able to learn a little bit more about some of the offerings we do in order to help our customers succeed. Thank you and goodbye.